in the first quarter. Then first play of the second, look at the dime. Little dish, 6 assists for LeBron. That one to Montrezl Harrell, who had 15 points off the bench. Lakers up 13. But in the fourth quarter, this was a close game. Lakers up just 2. LeBron, defense, offense, flush. He was 19 of 26 from the floor. He really took over in the fourth quarter. Look at him going up, swatting that one away from Colin Sexton. They called it a goaltend, then they overturned it. Then he's knocking down a 3 from the logo. That gave him 36. A minute later, the step back 3. Now he's at 41. A minute left in the game. Little Bernard King baseline action. LeBron James, 21 in the fourth, 46 points on the night. The Lakers remain perfect on the road. They win it in Cleveland, 115 to 108. So they're 10-0 on the road. And with that 46 points, he's the oldest Laker with a 40-point game since Kobe Bryant scored 60 in the final game of his career. And of course, today marks the 1-year anniversary of Kobe's tragic death. It was Sunday, January 26th of 2020, when Bryant and his 13-year-old daughter Gianna and 7 others were killed in a helicopter crash in Calabasas, California. The days and the weeks that followed were marked with emotional outpourings of grief and appreciation from around the world as people celebrated the life and the legacy of one of the great legends that we've ever seen in sports and well beyond. And so we have Jalen Rose with us today. And, you know, Jay, we just talked last week because it was the anniversary of the 81-point game, and we were remembering Kobe then. And so I just wonder, when you woke up this morning and you knew this was something everyone, and yourself included, would be talking about, what were the first thoughts that went through your mind?
Well, it's really tough, Greeny, because, you know, it's only 1 year. And we get introduced to these all-time great athletes and entertainers through their performance. But then when you start to get to know them and appreciate that there's a game of life that comes with this. And Kobe Bryant being drafted in 1996, and Jerry West saying that that was the greatest workout that he'd ever seen. Drafted by the Hornets, traded for Vlade Divac to the Los Angeles Lakers. Was a child phenom in the NBA annals, but he wasn't a starter on his own team. And a lot of people, including in his own locker room, resented that he was presented to be the golden child so very young. They go to Utah, they lose a playoff game, he shoots multiple air balls at the end of the game, and people start to assassinate his character. What does he do? He gets in the gym, he starts to work, and before you know it, Kobe Bryant becomes a 3-time back-to-back-to-back champion playing alongside Shaquille O'Neal. And then another, I guess, turbulent career thing happened when he and Shaq didn't see eye to eye and Shaq left. You remember this, Greeny. People chose sides, and they picked Shaq. The public picked Shaq. And then Shaq went to Miami and won a championship. And I remember covering a game when he and Dwayne Wade came back to play at L.A. versus Kobe. There were no handshakes that game. And so for Kobe Bryant to then reinvent himself again, change his number, win 2 more championships with Paul Gasol and Phil Jackson, that validated in his mind his all-time greatness. And we talk about Michael Jordan or LeBron James or whoever you want to be the greatest of all time, but I tell you, if I look really close, there'll never be another Michael Jordan. But Kobe Bryant is the next best thing. The turnaround jumper, the language at the press conference, the maturity, the discipline, the love of the game of basketball. Kobe loved nothing more than his family in basketball. And that also rubbed people the wrong way as a young player in the league, Greeny, because he was scoring 20, 25 points a game, but he was barely 21. And so to watch him grow up in front of our very eyes and see the 40-point explosions for a month and the 60-plus point game against the Mavs in 3 quarters and the 81-point game that we celebrated last week, and 60 points in his final basketball game? Mm-hmm. Like, who scores 60 points in their final basketball game and then goes on to win awards for his work beyond basketball? And you know, for doing this for so very long, Greeny, you got trophies on the mantle. You got championships. You in the Hall of Fame. Kobe was accomplishing that already in his young career as a producer. So we really lost a giant. We lost an iconic human being that just happened to play basketball. And it's really too soon to be having this conversation about somebody that's gone so very young.
It's a beautiful remembrance, and you're right. He won an Oscar, is what you're talking about, and had his sights set on so many other things that he wanted to do in his life. But one of the things that I wanted to do here was try and remember him with a little bit of a smile today. And so I'd ask you this. We talked about the 81-point game, but when he won his first championship, we just mentioned the three-peat. They beat your Indiana Pacers. How would you describe what it was like trying to guard Kobe Bryant at that point when he was at his absolute best?
So that series was his coming out party, Greeny. Phil wins a championship in '98 with Mike and the Bulls. He goes to the Lakers, and they win 3 straight in the early 2000s. Shaq fouls out. I think it's game 4 or 5, and they go into overtime, and that's when they went into what we used to call with MJ the Bermuda Triangle. We just give it to Kobe at the top and clear it out. And that's when he pointed to the ground after he made the jumper to get down and lay down. And that wasn't just to the opponent. That was to the media. That was to the fans. And you know what else? That was to his bench. I was on the court. That was to his team, too. That was them having to validate his greatness in front of the world. And it was really awesome to see. And I'm really proud that one of the most shared Kobe Bryant clips virally is a clip produced by Nanachka Khan and Melvin Marr and myself. And enjoy it today if you want to smile from Kobe Bryant and myself. It's called 81 Olives. And I really appreciated him doing it. And it's going to put a smile to your face on clearly what's going to be a tough day as we remember an all-time great human being.
Yeah, that was from Jalen versus Everybody. I remember it well. And he had a good sense of humor about that stuff. And that's the hardest part about today. Like Michael Wilbon mentioned it, you know, we lost Hank Aaron last week, and that's sad. But Hank Aaron lived to be 86 years old. He lived a full life. We missed out, his family missed out, and Kobe missed out on a lot of things that would have been special today, the one-year anniversary. Jalen, you're the best. Thank you for the remembrances this morning, and I know you will have much more.
I love you, my brother. Have a good day.
Through the day. You too. We'll see you a little bit later. Meanwhile, we will have basketball coming up tomorrow night on ESPN. Star Step, and the performance of the night was turned in by LeBron James last night. He said it was the home cooking. Back in Cleveland, he had dinner at his mother's house the night before, then went out and dropped 46 last night. Look at him cooking early. Lakers up by 7, and that's LeBron with a 3, and he had 17 in the first quarter. Now here's the first play of the second quarter. Look at the dish. Little dime for Montrezl Harrell, who had 15 off the bench. LeBron 6 assists on the night. Lakers up 13. This was a good game. Fourth quarter, Lakers up by 2. LeBron turning defense into offense with the flush. He was 19 of 26 from the floor. Later, Cavs are down by 2. Colin Sexton. LeBron is there for the swat. They originally called this goaltending, but then they overturned that. Then it's LeBron from the logo. At that point, he had 36, and then he would eventually go out, step back 3, and he had 41. And then watch a little Bernard King baseline action here. LeBron James, 21 points in the fourth quarter, 46 points on the night. The Lakers are 10-0 on the road this year as they knock off the Cavs 115-108 in scoring that season high. LeBron becomes the oldest Laker with a 40-point game since Kobe Bryant scored 60 in the last game of his career. The 46 are tied for the 4th most points ever by a player after turning 36 years old. But that, of course, turns our attention to that man. Today is the 1-year anniversary of the tragic death of Kobe Bryant. It was Sunday, January 26th of last year, when Bryant and his 13-year-old daughter Gianna and 7 others were killed in a helicopter crash in Calabasas, California. The days and weeks that followed were marked with emotional outpourings of grief and appreciation from around the world as people celebrated the life and the legacy of one of the greatest players of all time and one of the great legends as well. And we thought that to begin our conversation about that today, we would bring in our own Michael Wilbon. And Michael, thank you for getting up with us here today. And it is hard to believe that it has been 1 year in so many different ways. As you woke up this morning, what were the first thoughts you had relative to Kobe?
Well, Greeny, I started thinking about it, last night as I started reading some pieces about this 1 year anniversary. I guess we have to use that word. And, in this country, we weren't really locked into what was about to happen, COVID, until early March. And so late January, as we were getting ready to cover and indulge in the Super Bowl, this tragedy sent us into despair. And I mean that literally. More so here, but worldwide. But yes, particularly in this country, this plunged us into despair, the death of Kobe and his daughter and all the others. And I don't think we've come out of it. I mean, we've been in it. We've been stuck there. Obviously, with the pandemic, but also with this just saddening, this pounding, these deaths of Hall of Fame athletes subsequently, and maybe none of them were as tragic. I think just about, this past few days with Henry Aaron, but at least Henry Aaron had a full life, at 86 years old. Mm-hmm. Kobe Bryant certainly, didn't even have quite half of that. But I just started thinking about the despair that we have been in, and it started with that tragedy to me. That's my time frame, and all these things tend to be personal. And so I've thought about that. I try to think of some happier thoughts, but I was really struck, and it resonated with me, what LeBron and Anthony Davis were talking about, and other Lakers, but particularly them, saying they didn't want to have just public commemorations all the time. And obviously this stays with them, and they are shaken by it still a full year later. And I thought that too. I mean, I know we're going to talk about it. That's our jobs to talk about it. But we are still in despair. People are still mourning. And so I don't know quite how you handle it, but LeBron and Anthony Davis and their sentiments resonated with me.
Yeah, no question. A lot of people are still having a difficult time with it, and I agree with you that it did set off a year unlike any that we've ever experienced before. But one of the things we can do a year later is try and smile in remembering him. What is a story about Kobe Bryant that you think of that always makes you smile?
There are a few, but one of them, and I talked about it a lot last year in real time, is that people saw Michael Jordan in tears and just so emotionally overwrought, and speaking at one of the memorials for Kobe Bryant. And Michael rarely does that sort of thing publicly. And people just didn't understand the kind of relationship they had. I got a glimpse, because some of that played out here in Washington when Michael was with the Wizards, as both an executive and a player. And when I went to a Lakers game, Kobe, knowing that I had a relationship for a long time with Michael, if he had a big game, 40, 45 points, a triple-double, who knows, when the media is lined up outside the locker room, Kobe would often just drift over if he saw me, and I'd get an elbow in the ribs, and he'd lean over where nobody else could hear and just say, "How would the old man have done tonight? How would your boy have done tonight? Would the old man have been able to beat them tonight? Would he have been able to beat whoever fill in the blank?" And it was just so, and it was, I asked him, I said, "Look, can I talk about this on the air now or write about it?" And he said, people aren't going to understand. They're going to take it the wrong way. And he was probably right. I knew how he meant it. I knew of the relationship. But it was so funny. This would happen periodically, over the years. How would the old man have done? And, people handle these things differently, but Kobe had such fun with it. And there was such a reverence, not just a friendship, a reverence for his basketball idol. And that I think about that, when you look at these